Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk a little bit about a shift of power that's taken place in the Middle East. And there is a major shift of power, not just with Russia and China, but I want to point out several things that I think is very important. I want to start here with, it's called the Middle East Research and Information Project, and their article is titled Oil and the Outcome of the Iran-Iraq War. Some of this is from 1984. Now keep that in mind as we go through it, because you'll see how this has all come about today, from the Iraq War all the way to what's happening now. The Iran-Iraq War is reaching a critical phase. As a result, there is more of a chance today than ever before that a major change in the war is at hand. This could have both major consequences for the flow of oil in the near term and broader implications for power and influence in the region over the longer term. Although we are not yet convinced that the Iran-Iraq war threatens a major disruption in the flow of oil, the odds are beginning to change in the direction of greater danger for Western interests, meaning that the threat to the world oil market could become larger in this new phase. But the gravest threat could not come during the war itself, but from the outcome of the war. And they go on to say, because of the oil cushion that exists around the world, any disruption brought on by the conflict would probably be limited in size and duration. Now, they say the Iran-Iraq war has already resulted in a disruption of the flow of oil, but prices have not been significantly affected. Much of the world has not reacted with alarm. In this sense, the oil shocks of the 70s are not necessarily a good guide to the 80s. Now, keep in mind, this is 80s. And then they give some scenarios, and this is what I found truly interesting. The first scenario is the Iran-Iraq conflict may play itself out in such a way that a rough balance of power is established between the two Gulf powers, with Saudi Arabia as the third important player in the regional game. In recent times, Saudi Arabia has supported Iraq, but the logic of the Saudi position is to try to prevent the hegemony of either Iran or Iraq. For OPEC, a stalemated Iran-Iraq conflict with competition among the three big oil producers of the Gulf is a prescription for organizational weakness. We go down into scenario 2, Iranian hegemony, and as we work through these a little bit, you'll begin to see how this was set up. A second outcome, less likely than the first, is a decisive Iranian victory, which we know didn't happen, in southern Iraq, which would establish Iran as a hegemonic power in the Gulf. If Tehran would consolidate its position, it would have a strong voice in the political and economic decisions of its neighbors. So this could mean that Iran could influence large portions of the Gulf. And as you can see, since we get reading this now, we have the option of looking back on history and see what happens. We know what happened with the Iraq War. We know how quickly we pulled out. We know what the Arab Spring has done, how quickly it's brought together forces that normally wouldn't join together, like Iran, Russia, China, even Iraq. Iraq has a large Sunni population, but it also is Shiite, and it is aligning itself with Iran. Anyway, scenario 3, continuing attrition and oil distribution. A variant of the first two outcomes would be a continuation of the Iran-Iraq war, with Iran in a strong position, but without a clear-cut victory. In these circumstances, there would be recurring danger of oil disruptions of moderate size. These could result from successful Iranian or Iraqi strikes at sensitive targets. And like I said, we know from history what happened there. The greater danger, and this is very interesting, the most difficult oil supply problem for the world to deal with would not be the small disruptions resulting from the continuing Iran-Iraq conflict. Market forces and military capabilities would keep prices in line. The greater danger would come from an Iranian victory. Oil would doubtless continue to flow from the Gulf, but Iran would have considerable influence over the terms on which it was made available. In time, political changes might take place on the Arab side of the Gulf. Conservative Islamic regimes might be hostile to the West, and foreign technicians might be asked to leave. This is happening today. The greater danger that they talked about is happening. Iran has gained influence, major influence just in the last few weeks with this new deal that they have made. This is amazing, and it is all over oil. I've got a few more things that I want to point out. This next article is from the AL Monitor, the Pulse of the Middle East. It's about the Iran-Iraq alignment that is taking place with Syria. That's a picture of they inspected an Iranian cargo plane at Baghdad's airport. This was done in October of 2012. So you can see how they start coming together. Iraq's Syria policy is probably the most ambiguous foreign policy in the region. From the outside, Iraq seems to have adopted a disassociation policy similar to that adopted by Lebanon regarding the Syrian situation. But in reality, Iraq supports the Syrian regime in several regards. It maintains a direct relationship with the Syrian regime and refuses entry to Syrian refugees, which is in contravention to Iraq's internal obligations, and ignores that Syria has hosted millions of Iraqi refugees over the years, including Prime Minister al-Maliki. Iraq's Syria policy cannot be separated from the Iraq-Iran relations in recent years. These relations were marked by an increase in Iranian influence in Iraq, to the point that Maliki went from having many differences with Iran and its policies to being one of Iran's allies. This is after Iran used its influence in Iraq to support Maliki's continued rule in the face of his opponents, both within the Shiite sect and among the Iraqi elite. Now remember, for later, this Sunni Shiite fight that's been going on, it's over a lot of differences within the Muslim religion itself. And now they're starting to come together with this stuff. That's kind of disturbing. I'll show you why in a minute. The result of this shift in Iraqi policies and Maliki's choices is an increased Iraqi tendency to comply with Iranian policies and the network of regional and international alliances. This shift became apparent with Maliki's visit to Moscow, which resulted in Iraqi-Russian agreements that went beyond the $4 billion Russian arms deal. And also, recently, Iraq and Iran have met in Iran. This Iraqi-Russian arms deal happened because Iraq wanted to please Iran, which in turn wanted to reward Moscow for its pro-Syria and pro-Iran positions in the face of challenges such as the nuclear issue and the future of the Syrian regime. The arms deal was part of Iraq's policy of supporting Iran and its practices. Whether these policies are related to Iran itself or to Iran's allies, particularly Syria, which currently seems to be the most important item on Iran's foreign policy agenda. And Iran has also clearly and unambiguously supported Tehran's policy, especially with regard to the nuclear issue, international sanctions. It's been said that they have provided much needed trade with Iran in the black market. Okay, here's a short video that I want to play. I found this extremely interesting. It's more up to date, and it's from Next News Network. You can go on YouTube and watch other videos by them, but I just want to play this. It's only 3 minutes long.
Could the United States move towards closer ties with Iran even as it drifts away from its alliance with Saudi Arabia? Well, several moves on the part of the Persian nation as well as events at home could make the case. From 1953 to 1979, both the United States and Britain had close ties with Iran. It was those ties which helped spark the Iranian Revolution, resulting in the capture of 52 Americans who were held captive for 444 days. Americans drew closer to Saudi Arabia as domestic oil became more scarce and expensive beginning in the 1930s. The need for affordable oil and gas led the United States to overlook many human rights violations committed by the government in Riyadh. For the last 80 years, the ties between Washington and the oil-rich nation have been close, even after 15 of the 19 hijackers on 9/11 came from that country. What radically changes the balance of power between the two countries is the widespread production of oil from shale. For the first time in decades, America could soon become a net exporter of oil. The country will no longer need the raw fuel currently being imported from Saudi Arabia. But why would this draw Washington closer to Iran? This is due to the fact that the Middle East is largely divided into two camps, those countries who are closer to Saudi Arabia and those who are more intimate with ties with Tehran. Many observers point out the civil war in Syria is in fact a proxy war between Riyadh and Iran.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here for just a minute, and I want to comment on that. I have felt all along, and others have too, that this war in Syria is a proxy war. It's a proxy war with Iran, it's a proxy war with Russia, and the civilians are the ones that are paying the price. Children are starving. Way over 100,000 people have been killed, and it's all over oil. There's a pipeline that they want to take from Iran through Iraq, through Turkey, and up into Europe. And, you know, this is just, it's just amazing. Here, let's finish listening to this because you won't believe it.
While Saudi Arabia is ruled by a small group of people who largely subjugate their citizens, the residents of Iran are highly educated. The Persian people are also far more Western in their attitudes than people of other nations in the region. The large educated middle class in that country could be far more open to reform than the citizens of Saudi Arabia. There's also a power struggle occurring in the Middle East. Egypt is normally one of the most powerful and influential nations in the region. With unrest and war weakening the government there, nations are looking for a new voice in world affairs. Iran is now opening itself up to the West in a way that is not seen in decades. President Hassan is also learning how to get the attention and respect of Western leaders. The 65-year-old leader has announced his government will be revealing evidence that Saudi Arabia is behind much of the armed opposition to American forces in Iraq. When our nation needed oil to import from Saudi Arabia, our nation's leaders overlooked the human rights violations. George W. Bush took little action against the Saudis after 9/11, but now, without the need for oil from the country, will Washington begin to look towards Iran for its newest ally? Countries in the Middle East are spending large quantities of money to match each other in military preparedness. War and failures of governments has led to massive exoduses of people, especially from Afghanistan and Syria. This crisis is one where suffering could be reduced with the assistance of a wealthy ally like the United States. The people of Iran have a saying that may apply. Mountains don't meet, but people do.
Okay, I just thought that video was amazing, and it was truthful. It pointed out all of the points of the power shift in the Middle East and why it's happening. Here's a short piece from Wikipedia. I know some people say Wikipedia is not reliable, but I do double check on all the information I get from them. The Iran-Iraq-Syria pipeline, called the Friendship Pipeline by the governments involved, is a proposed natural gas pipeline. And let's move away just a minute from the oil into the natural gas, because that's very important too. Now remember, Russia controls the natural gas for most of Europe, and they just recently found natural gas off the Israel coast also. So there's a lot of different things coming together. They're trying to tie these countries in together economically. So not only are we going to see the religious ties come together, we're going to see the economic ties come together that is also prophesied in Revelation. The pipeline will be 3,480 miles long and have a diameter of 56 inches. It's known as the Persian Pipeline, and it's in July of 2011, Iran, Iraq, and Syria said they plan to sign a contract potentially worth around $6 billion to construct a pipeline running from South Pars towards Europe via these countries in Lebanon, and then under the Mediterranean to a European country with a refinery and related infrastructure in Damascus. I find that very interesting. I just can't stress this enough, this importance of all of these economic and religious things coming together. There's one more comment that I would like to show at the bottom, at the end. It says, Syria's rationale for rejecting the Qatar proposal was said to be to protect the interests of its Russian ally, which is Europe's top supplier of natural gas. Again, you find the connection with Russia. Okay, here is a map of the Middle East, and here is my rendition of possibly the path that the pipeline could take, because the description said goes south from the Iranian border east to the Mediterranean Sea. Of course, we know this is the Mediterranean Sea. So as you can see, it would cross through Iraq, Syria, and possibly even Turkey. As you'll learn, these gas deals and oil deals are, they're just making a major power shift. Saudi Arabia is left there kind of like, well, okay, what's going on now? As we'll see here in just a minute. They're not very happy about it. In fact, they're quite upset. Here's another video. This one is by Syrian News, and it's titled World Bank Whistleblower on the Syria Pipeline. Karen Hoods studied law at Yale University, economics at Amsterdam. She worked in the U.S. Export-Import Bank of the U.S. in the 80s, legal department of the World Bank from 1986 to 2007. She established a non-governmental organization, Committee of the International Law Section of the American Bar Association. To give you just a little background on her. What did she blow the whistle on? In 2007, she warned the U.S. Treasury Department and Congress that the U.S. would lose its right to appoint the president of the World Bank if the current American president of the World Bank did not play by the rules. So they give lots of documentation here that you can follow if you want to go to YouTube and look it up. Syrian Daily News, Syrian News, World Bank Whistleblower on Syria. Here's some more of their documentation that they're bringing up. This is as early as March of last year. Iran, Iraq resumed talks on gas deal. April of last year, oil and pipeline geopolitics, the U.S.-NATO race for Syria's black gold. Syria's proven oil reserves amounting to 2.5 billion barrels. And then in June of last year, the geopolitics of gas and the Syrian crisis. Syrian opposition armed to thwart construction of Iran-Iraq-Syria gas pipeline. So you can see this has been going on for a long time, and they are finally getting the players in their places. Some more real quick documentation. June of last year, the U.S. wants Syrian oil, not democracy. June 28th, another oil war as the U.S. playing with gas in Syria. And again in July, Syria, the Mediterranean peace. It's been said that there is billions of dollars of oil in the Syrian oil fields. And this is, I'm sorry to say, I hated to believe this, but it's the truth. That's what this is about, and it's looking more and more like it is the truth. They are vying for our oil. They're putting people into place with a major power shift. The United States evidently wanted to control Syria. Russia said, I'm going to control Syria. And it's one big proxy war. Syria and its allies have met head-on with neocon plans laid in previous decades and not associated in the public mind with the Obama administration. What we're seeing now was described in a 1996 framework created in a study group led by Richard Pearl and entitled A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. Some more documentation by them. Arab tribes that cross into Syrian territory and are hostile to the Syrian ruling elite and suggest striking Syrian military targets in Lebanon, and should that prove insufficient, striking at select targets in Syria proper. Throughout this document, ways in which the United States can be persuaded to buy in are pointed out. Self-described, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, Michael Layden wrote an opinion in the Wall Street Journal April of 2002 in which he stated, now get this, we do not want stability in Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and even Saudi Arabia. The real issue is not whether, but how to destabilize. That's what this whole Arab thing has been about all this time, is destabilizing the Middle East so that they can put their power infrastructure in place. It's all about the oil. It's all about the gas. One more thing before we move on. August the 28th, 2013, the war on Iran begins in Syria. And this is an article they're quoting by RT. A centerpiece of this strategy is the Iran-Iraq-Syria gas pipeline deal signed last month, intended to provide Iran with a new delivery route to the Mediterranean coast, giving it renewed access to the Eurasian landmass and markets. The pipeline is obviously a blow to U.S.-Israeli attempts to strangle the regime in Iran economically. Syria, being the critical linchpin in this deal, figures significantly in the Iranian strategy to survive the sanctions, thereby necessitating Iranian involvement in the conflict, if only to provide the critical support Assad needs to maintain control of the security of the country. It's just mind-boggling to me how this has come about. And it's not only the economic pieces that they're trying to put together. Iran has its own agenda. So does Iraq. So does Saudi Arabia. They all are united in this end-time scenario that's in their Bible, the Koran. And they believe, some of them anyway, that Turkey will play a major part in this also. The Mahdi will come during a time of conflict. You just can't make it up. But I think that this is very interesting. This does definitely show a shift of power, not only in the Middle East, but in the world. We're just going to watch for just a minute so you'll know where I'm getting this stuff from. This is not the only video. There is a video from Iran called The Coming is Upon Us, and I've done other posts on that also. You can go to my blog and look at that. But here, the Iran-Iraq war is portent of the coming of the Mahdi.
The Iran-Iraq war is a portent of the coming of Mahdi alayhi salam. The Hadith reports that a major war will take place in the end times. There will be tumult in Shawwal, talk of war in Dhul al-Qa'dah, and the outbreak of war in Dhul al-Hijjah. These 3 months matches the dates of the developmental stages of the Iran-Iraq war. Tumult in Shawwal. Uprising in the month of Shawwal. The first uprising against the Shah took place on 5 Shawwal 1398, or September 8, 1976, as indicated by the Hadith. Talk of war in Dhul al-Qa'dah and the outbreak of war in Dhul al-Hijjah. A full-blown war broke out between Iran and Iraq in Dhul al-Hijjah 1400, or October 1980. Another hadith describes the details of this war as follows. A tribe will come from the Farsi direction saying, "You Arabs, you have been too zealous. If you don't give them their due rights, nobody will have an alliance with you. It must be given to them one day, and to you the following day, and mutual promises must be kept. They will be going up to Mutek. Muslims will be coming down to the plain. Mushrikun, idolaters, will be standing over there on the bank of a black river, Rakabeh. On the other side, there will be a war between them. Allah will deprive both armies of victory." Those coming from the Farsi direction, those coming from the Iranian side. Coming down to the plain, coming down to the Iraqi plain. Mutek, name of a mountain in the region, and Rakabeh, a region where the oil wells are concentrated. You Arabs, you have been too zealous. If you don't give them their due rights, nobody will have an alliance with you. This hadith may draw attention to the outbreak of a racial dispute that will cause both sides to come down to the plain and wage war. Iraqi plain. Allah will deprive both armies of a victory. The Iran-Iraq war lasted for 8 years, and despite the enormous number of casualties, neither side could claim victory. Briefly, the statements in the hadiths came true one by one, and people experienced them just as they were described.
Okay, there you heard some of what they believe, and they believe that their prophecies have been fulfilled, and they're very close to the Mahdi. This is from a man called Adnan Akhtar. I have done other posts on him on my blog, and I will be doing a few more because this is very important. He is from Turkey. He has some very strange beliefs. He believes that the Mahdi is going to come with the Ark of the Covenant. Jesus will be with him, and he will unite all religions. He claims to love the Jews. He claims to love the Christians. However, we are misguided, and that Jesus is not God's son. But anyway, I wanted to read just a little bit of this to you. It's called the Turkish Islamic Union is the only solution. They're trying to get their new caliphate built, and it's coming along pretty good. Allah has commanded all Muslims to be united. So long as the Muslim world fails to abide by this command revealed in the Koran, so long as they fail to establish the Turkish Islamic Union, it is clear that these and similar sufferings will continue. These massacres, troubles, and hardships are nothing new. Muslims have been ruthlessly oppressed for around a century. With its 1.5 billion population, the Islamic world will be an influential force in the establishment of peace, love, and security. Remember, our Bible says when they mention this peace, love, and security, sudden destruction will come upon them. This corruption and bloodshed can be brought to an end only by the establishment of the Turkish Islamic Union. It's clear and a certain solution for the salvation of Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan, East Turkestan, the Crimea, Kirkuk, and Moro. This union will be a guarantee for all Jews, Christians, Buddhists, and people of all opinions, not just Muslims. Once this union is established, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and all mankind will live at ease. Hello, this is not, this is straight out of Revelation. It's the bringing together of one religion. It's also the fatal head wound that the beast received and was healed again because the Ottoman Empire was taken down in World War I, and now it is rising again. They've just about got this shift of power done and all the players in place. And like I said, I will do more on Adnan Akhtar and this Turkish Islamic Union later. For now, I just basically wanted to introduce you into what's really going on in the Middle East, how there's a shift in the balance of power, how it ties in with prophecy, how it ties in with the false religion, the false messiah, and also the economic system of the world government. And it's just, I don't know, like I said, it's just amazing, and it is all coming together. Read Revelation 13, read the parts of Revelation again, get familiar with them, get familiar with your Bible. We haven't heard the end of this Islamic Turkish alliance and Caliphate, and we haven't heard the end of this man named Adnan Akhtar. He plays a very major role in this. But for now, stay prayed up, packed up, and ready to go.